Everybody who's requested a ballot by mail up to this point has already received their ballot, and the election process for my office is well underway. Harvey, lots of water, lots of flooding, and the end result was that we had a number of polling locations that we are not able to use for this election. Last November, we had 765 polling locations across the county. For this election, we will have around 735, and that's because we've had to consolidate over 30 locations, having to move, facilities that are not available to another location. That's less than 5% of the total number of polling locations, but as you know, if you're one of those 5%, you are impacted. Now, our message to the voters are, vote early. Because in voting early, you don't have to worry about where your polling location on election day has moved. Now, voting early, we actually had some locations that were impacted. If you look at our early voting poster here, you will see highlighted a number of locations that were impacted. Champion Forest Baptist Church, we actually had to move from that location, not because of flooding, because the facility there was being used for disaster, them having brought in people from the Baptist Association who are actually helping, assisting people, and there wasn't any room there. We look at Kingwood, we look at Atascocita, we look at Bear Creek, we look at Cypress Creek, and that's where we moved the Champion Forest place to, is up to the Klein Multipurpose Center. We also, the Spring First Church, we've moved it down the street just a little ways, and then also Mercer Park, which was flooded. Palm Center is one of those we just moved down the street to the new library. That's not because of flooding, that's because we got a better polling location. Our main polling location downtown at 1001 Preston, we're actually moving it from the first floor to the fourth floor because the jury assembly building, which was flooded, is now going to be using that first floor facility for juries during the time that we'll be holding our voting. So, but the big picture is, remember, early voting, you can vote anywhere. And of course, 40 of our locations were not affected, not moved at all. So there's plenty of opportunity for our voters to have an opportunity to come vote early. And that's the message that we have for this election. We have 119 and a half hours of early voting across the county. And early voting is from October the 23rd through November the 3rd. That is 12 days, 45 locations. And on the weekend of October 28th, we're open on a weekend. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to come early vote. Also, for people who have been displaced, they can vote by mail. The details are on harrisvotes.com. The ability to vote by mail for those who've been out of the county, they can just go and apply for a ballot just like anybody else. If you've been displaced, I want you to know the post office is forwarding ballot by mails. All the ballots that we have sent out last week, we've only had 20 returned, and all 20 of those people have been contacted and they are getting a ballot sent back to them. So any return ballots to our office, we are following up diligently with every one of them so that the voters will be getting their ballots for this election. Now, the requirements to vote at the polls are the exact same as they were last November. As you know, we had photo ID requirements, and it's on this poster here. Nothing has changed from last November. Those people who do not have an election ID or one of the 7 acceptable forms of photo ID, they still have we have the process where they can fill out a declaration at the polls explaining why, and they can bring one of the supporting documents that's in the poster and on the flyers, the handouts that you have. That includes a valid voter registration certificate, a certified birth certificate, must be an original, copy of an original bank statement, copy of an original government check or paycheck, copy of an original current utility bill, and copy of an original government document with voter's name and address. Original required if it has a photo on it. So But the big message is photo ID is still required. Everyone who currently has one of the 7 forms of acceptable photo ID is required to bring it and use it, because you're signing an oath if you try to vote without one of those. That says you don't have one of those. So please bring your photo ID. Now, it went great last November. People brought their photo IDs. It was very small numbers when you look at the total number of voters that had to take advantage of what we call the reasonable impediment declaration document, and the elections went smoothly. But the big message to our voters for this November election is vote early. And to assist us in that message of voting early, Clear Channel Outdoors has been providing billboards for us across the county, including their digital billboards. So we're excited to be able to get that message out to our voters that, you know, voting early is the simplest solution. You don't even have to worry about if you're one of those 5% of the polling locations that's moved. Just vote early. And I want to turn it over to Lee Bella now, so that Lee can unveil our early voting posters. These are half-size samples, the big ones. But please communicate to everyone. Go vote early. But before I do that, I want to tell you, if you do wait till Election Day, okay, you go to harrisvotes.com. This is where you can find the early voting poster on harrisvotes.com. Yeah, I'll put it up high. And also you can find where your actual personal polling location is, and the actual, if you can see, a simple search on the website, so you can find out where you must vote on Election Day if you choose to vote on Election Day. But realize you're going to be one of those 5% that might be having to vote somewhere else. So I always encourage voters, regardless of where you live, use harrisvotes.com to find out where the early voting locations are, and also to find out where the Election Day polling locations are. Anyway, call my office if you have any questions. As you can see, the number is right there on the front of harrisvotes.com. And we expect to have, you know, a great turnout. It won't be as big as last November by any means. And, you know, there is some consideration that people that are impacted by the flooding probably are not going to pay attention. But let me tell you, government needs voters being engaged in the process. The quality of your government is only as good as your participation in the process. So I've been greatly encouraged about neighbors helping neighbors in this whole process in the county. We've had a lot of people hurt, a lot of people impacted, but the shining story has been how neighbors have helped neighbors. And I encourage you, help your neighbor to come out to participate in the voting process and join us at the polls for this November election. Thank you so much, and Lee Bella, please go forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stannard. And on behalf of Clear Channel and Clear Channel Worldwide, I want to say how proud we are to be a part of this effort, because voting is a sacred right in our country, and we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to vote and know that there's an election coming up, because our attention has been a little bit diverted in the last couple of months. So we want to make sure to remind people not only to vote, but we have these billboards up in 4 different languages. So English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. So, and they're on not only the large freeway boards, but they're also in the neighborhood boards. They're also on our digital boards that are in Humble, Jacinto City, Baytown, and Pasadena. So this message will be seen more than 25 million times before the election, and it represents about a $60,000 to $70,000 donation by Clear Channel for this campaign. So, without further ado, Mr. Stannard, we'll unveil the first one here. And we'll just do this on 3. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. Okay. We will move over here. One, 2, and 3. Thank you so much, and we hope that this reminds everyone that we have an election, and it's your right and privilege to vote in this country. So the English and the English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese designs are behind it. Stand back for you.
All right. 9 tabloid pages long is how long the sample ballot for this election. There are entities, of course, constitutional amendments start out our ballot. You go from the city of Baytown, Bel Air, Houston, Missouri City, Houston Community College, Aldine ISD, Crosby ISD, Cypress Fairbanks, and on and on. It's on the early voting poster at the very top, the list of every entity that is joining us for this election. That's why it's so important to go to harrisvotes.com, look up your own personal ballot. When you do that through search, you can bring up your personal one so you don't see all 9 pages. You can see probably a page and a half. So do participate in going to harrisvotes.com for the most current information on voting in Harris County. So I'm ready to take questions now.
Mr. Stanner,
Yes.
what about the 2,400 iPads? Were they okay? Did they flood?
Oh, no, there was no flooding. In fact, we'll be using, out of 100 polling locations, we'll be doing a test with our electronic poll books for this November election for planning going live across the whole county next year. So, no, they're being put in carts. Cases are being assembled for those 100 locations this next November.
And you're hoping to use all of them by the following?
Yes, we'll be using them in the primary. That's our plans, yes. Yeah, our application has gone through extensive testing, and we're very excited about it. That'll be another story for another day, though. All right, next question.
So people displaced by the flood, is voting by a mail-in ballot their only option, or can they vote?
No, they can go early voting. That's why we tell them to go early vote, because you can vote anywhere in the county. It makes it simple. It makes it easy.
Okay.
Now, if you're out of the county for the whole term of the early voting and election day, you can vote by mail. So that is an option for people who've been displaced.
Could they still go to if their house was flooded, could they still go to the polling place that was
Wherever
supposed to be
they're
for their
registered.
house?
Yes, wherever they're registered. Now, the registration, if you're actually permanently going to be moved, I encourage people to go get re-registered. The deadline to be registered for this election is coming up October 10th. Great, thank you. So October 10th is the deadline to register if you need to move your registration. But if you still, it's still your home, still your residence, even though you're not physically there because, it's under construction, you can still vote with that registration address. Vote anywhere in the county, early voting. On election day, you'll need to find out where your polling location is. 95% of the people, it's the same place. 5% of them could very well be moved down the street to the next neighborhood. But go to harrisvotes.com to find out where you must vote if you wait till election day.
Do you have a list of places that were flooded, of polling sites that were flooded?
Yes, we have a list here, but remember, it might be that we're finding out that they're becoming available at the last minute. But yes, they have a list here if you want to get with one of the people here.
And they can find this list also online?
No, we don't put the list of the ones that aren't available online. No, but it is available. But you can find the list that we are using online. Yes. Okay, next question.
Mr. Stanner, in
Yes.
a usual election, you would have how many polling locations available?
We had 765 last November. For this one, I think we're like 735.
And how many locations were flooded and may not be available?
Well, I think there's like 35, 37 on the list. But remember, they can become available within the next week or two, and we can still use them on election day. So it's a little fluid in the process, but some of them we have consolidated and will be moved.
Do you think that
Regarding the previous concerns about ADA availability for all polling locations, can you comment about that?
Yes, it's very much part of our process to ensure that people have access to every one of our polling locations. And as you know, we've not ever experienced anybody who actually was not able to access the polling location. Now, if anyone is handicapped, has any issues, they can always vote by mail. And also, curbside voting is available for all of those voters. We have curbside voting available at every one of our locations for people who have issues, getting into the polls.
how about at nursing homes? Are you guys, because of the law that had passed?
Yes, we are addressing some of the nursing homes. actually putting out people to bring the ballots to them at the nursing that laws in place. It's not, for this election, we don't have a lot of ballot by mail requests, so the number of locations where nursing homes we're having this service is not a very large number. I know it's under a dozen, so we'll be going out there in teams representing both parties for those locations.
I mean, would you have to go to all of the nursing homes,
No,
regardless
it's
of whether
only ones,
somebody?
I believe, that have 5 registered voters or 5 people who requested a ballot by mail. So therefore, it's not a large number of locations at this time.
You know, the back to the iPads.
Yeah.
Those were purchased in 2015. Is there a reason why they weren't rolled out sooner?
Because we had to get the application, what I call essentially perfect. It has to work, perfect. We had to do all the testing, and that did take longer than what we anticipated. But we're excited about what we're going to be doing, the testing on this November and then next year. So it's going to be a great product. I think the voters, everybody we've trained and tested and shown it to, has been very excited about how it works for Harris County. Next question.
Can you talk about the impact of Harvey and how much it is affecting the infrastructure of voting?
Well, I just did. It's about it's like 35 locations that we are not available for us to be able to use. And some of it is because of flooding. Some of it is because, like the Champion Forest Baptist Church, where they're just taking care of the residents, doing assistance to them, and so the facility is being not available because of that. So I think the story is there's plenty of voting opportunities in Harris County. Vote early. That's what the message of the billboards is. Vote early. So those 5%, that's how you can best solve that problem. But even then, go to harrisvotes.com. There is a place for you to vote on election day. Just for those 5%, it's not necessarily the same place you voted last November.
Is flexibility a priority for the county for those who were displaced? Let's say they cannot find certain documents and the backup documents.
Well, they will need the photo ID requirements. Now, they can go to DPS and get a replacement photo ID. And also, if you don't have a photo ID, and you do have one, if you can't find it on election day, you can still come vote. You can vote provisionally, and you have 6 days to go get a photo ID. You can even go to DPS, and they can print out a picture copy one, which we will accept for actually voting within that 6-day cure period.
So is being a flood victim a legitimate, reasonable impediment to not having a photo ID in time for the election?
No, you're going to have to. You can do that if you lost it. You don't have it. Yes, it would be a reasonable one, but you need to have one of these other proof of evidences too that I listed earlier.
Okay.
Yes, the reasonable impediment declaration. If it's destroyed, that would be a reasonable one. But there are other ID things, whether that be a utility bill or other type of item.
I mean, what if you literally lost everything, including you're not having a utility bill because you were displaced? So, what if you literally don't have any of them?
There's over 30 days. It's over a month before Election Day. So there's plenty of opportunity for one to go get the ID that they require. I would believe right now to be able to get the government services that you need at this point in time, you'll be needing that ID anyway. So please go ahead and get your photo ID. There's plenty of time to get it before Election Day. Okay, next question. Yes, sir.
Had we been able to have voting centers, we would not have avoided this particular situation where the iPads purchased 2 years ago and really been implemented. We would have been able, like in Fort Bend County, to have voting centers throughout the county, so we would not have to find new voting locations. We would have had locations available, and anybody who was voting anywhere in the county could go to any of the voting centers, not have to return to the home precincts, which have been destroyed. So,
because I don't think you understand how large Harris County is.
I do, sir.
Harris County is large, and there's not a voting solution, electronic poll book, that can handle 765 locations like it does in early voting. The system that we use in early voting, which they use in Fort Bend, cannot do Harris County. It cannot do that. You cannot do that real-time communication between all 765 locations with that system. So that's what we're using early voting. It can handle early voting with 46 locations. So to develop, let me finish.
You purchased $2 million worth of voting equipment,
It is
iPads, to do this task, when you had no plans to utilize it.
Okay, you want to make a political statement. I'm not going to answer his political statement, but I will tell you it was not $2 million. But I will tell you also that what we're about here is providing the iPads are to provide the infrastructure so that we can, in the future, if the commissioners want, if the elected officials want countywide voting. That are two totally separate questions. Now, the infrastructure we are putting in place with the iPads would be able to handle that. But that's a different question, and that's for the future. And guess what? To be able to go straight into it without testing it, to know that all that communication is working, would be irresponsible. So we're doing it the right way. We have perfected our software, and we're rolling it out and testing it this November, and then we'll be using it next year. And then there'll be more testing to make sure that it could actually handle all that communication, and we'll be fine-tuning it. So we're on top of this, and to rush something out to where it fell flat on its face could be a disaster. Due diligence is being done, and we're excited about the direction that we're going. The message here is please tell your people, vote early, because we want everyone to have a seamless voting experience for this election.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
how many entities are having elections, and how many registered voters do you have currently?
Well, it's the whole county. The voter registrar, I believe, has this over like 2.245 or 5 million is the number of registered voters currently. The number that are registered, on the 10th is the ones that are being eligible to vote in this election. So, if you moved and you permanently moved, go update your voter registration. If not, don't worry about it. Go vote early, and on election day you must vote, though, at the polling location your precinct is voting at.
And how many entities are having elections?
You're going to have to read the list there. There's quite a few. There's over a dozen, but it's at the top of the early voting poster. Okay, next question. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Help us get the message out to our voters of Harris County to vote early. It's the most unstressful, the easiest solution, because you can vote anywhere in the whole county when you vote early. And, of course, harrisvotes.com. All the information about elections you need in Harris County at harrisvotes.com.
And then if I can get one in front of the Spanish version as well. Can I get one over here on this side? Linda, I'd love to have you in this picture. I want the League of Women Voters in our category 1. And then I can actually have y'all indicate our Chinese and Vietnamese as well. This way, color. Actually, I might have to have y'all hold them. Because they're eyes. Yes, that'd be perfect. And if I can have it hold it. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Lee, can you
On the website, but these, you're not talking about the billboards, right?
count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Ma'am?
And I'm glad I wore a dress.
Ma'am.
We are so hi. So appreciate thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yes, let's do it. We'll get together soon. Bye, y'all. Thank you. Nice. Would you like a picture of Mr. Center?
No, we want to sit the board.
All right.
And Roseanne. Yes. Thanks for getting in.
Tell them to vote early.
Yeah.
I know hassle.
Yeah, just get it done. Just get it done. Save yourself a headache.
I don't understand the infrastructure it takes for the largest one to get it.
You didn't want
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in your elections, you have to get it right.
Right, right. No, I understand.
So that's why it's all this testing.
We have a second conference at 12 o'clock. Yes, but let's get in.
It's horrible. I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I can. French with no Spanish.